There's a bit of a story now I'm going to tell you. I wrote my first concerto during the quarantine. I started researching my ancestry some. It all started because my mother was adopted, and she never wanted to find out much about her birth parents. And I started getting these emails from 23andMe, because I had done that years ago, that you have DNA relatives. And I got contacted by one of them who I had quite a bit of shared DNA. And after much back and forth and researching and stories, it turned out that we shared the same grandfather on my mother's side. And that got me thinking a lot about my grandparents, because now I have 3 sets of them. But the grandparents that I knew, my father's parents and my mother's adopted parents that I thought were my grandparents until I was quite older, all came from Russia, the part of Russia now that is either Belarus or Ukraine. And they all came over between 1907 and 1910. It was during the time where there was quite a bit of discrimination going on and persecution of the Jewish people in the villages and in the cities. They called them the pogroms, where indiscriminately the Tsar would send out his army just to harass the Jewish citizens, burn their villages, their temples, destroy their markets. And it got to be too much. And between 1880 and 1922, over 2 million Jews fled Russia. And many of them came here to the United States, my grandparents being among them. And I thought about them a lot and what it must have been like for them to leave the place where they have been for generations. They had all their family, they had friends, to venture to a place that they'd never been, they'd only heard of. They did not know the language, did not know the customs, did not even know the currency. And as hard as the quarantine was for all of us, I just imagined what it must have been like for them to start over in a new homeland. So I wrote this concerto. It's called Coming to America Concerto, and it's in 3 parts. The first part is called Home of My Ancestors, and I tried to capture the feeling of where my ancestors came from and what it was like for them day-to-day life, what they enjoyed doing, their work, their devotion, and also the disruption that would happen periodically, but that their resilience was what helped them to survive. And it has actually helped the tribe of Jews survive for thousands of years, is that they're incredibly resilient. It's part of our stubbornness. So that's the first movement. The second movement is called The Crossing. And I was imagining what it must have been like for them to journey across this vast ocean on a huge ship where they'd never seen an ocean before. And I imagined, well, I knew that my father's mother got quite seasick on the journey. And my grandfather met her on the boat coming across and took care of her. And when they came to America, they got married. So there was romance. There was some uplifting things that happened, I'm sure, on those long voyages across the ocean. But it was tough. And there must have been quite a bit of anxiety, trepidation, not knowing where you were going. Because for me, when I imagined what they thought they were coming into, America was more of a concept than a place. They had heard it was a place where there was opportunity. You can start over. You can be free. The third movement is the arrival. And in this movement, they're coming into New York Harbor. There's a mist in the air. They can barely see land, but they're starting to make it out. And they're incredibly excited and at the same time cautious. You know, what's going to become of them? They also had heard probably that many people were turned away at Ellis Island. Not everybody was allowed in. So they weren't even sure if they and their meager belongings would even make it to the shores of America. But in this piece, I pictured them coming into New York Harbor and passing the Statue of Liberty, and what that must have felt like for them. So that's basically the outline of these three movements. It's a concerto, so it's really one piece of music. You do not applaud between movements, even if I pause. That would be a little disruptive, because it's really just one piece. So this is my first time playing it in public. And thank you, George. You've removed about 50% of the shadow. And so I'll try and play 50% of the notes right. Anyways, this is called Coming to America Concerto.